All right, we got a 2016, I believe, Ford Explorer or Ford Escape in here. It's got the 1.5 EcoBoost in it, and I've been going over to her house for about 2 months now. What's going on? I believe she has a water intrusion problem on these engines. If you don't know, these engines are real common for water intrusion problems. I've heard different stories about it. Ford just goes ahead and replaces the block on them. And from what I understand, the sleeves and the piston and the cylinders actually shift in them over time, and then it allows water into the block. And that's what I believe is going on with this one. It's losing coolant slowly, and every once in a while he lets the coolant or she lets the coolant get too low, and it goes in limp mode. And then I go over and reset it for her. She said she was going to get a different car, and just needed to get it, nurse it along until she got her taxes back. So anyway, that's what I've been doing. Just go over there. It goes in limp mode. She can't hardly drive it, and then I reset it for her with my launch, and then I guess they let it go low and coolant again, and then it's happened twice since I looked at it the first time. And now she said it was running fine. She shut it off, came out the next morning, wouldn't start. It's turning over kind of fast. My first thought was possibly a timing belt flew off because it's got 140,000 on it. But she said it was running fine, then she shut it off and came out the next morning and didn't start. So I kind of don't think it's a timing belt, even though it does seem like it turns over pretty fast. That was my first initial thought. And then I got to thinking about it. I told her, have it towed, and we'll see if maybe the spark plugs are fouled out on it from the coolant level, or from the coolant going in the cylinders. Because if I give it gas, a little bit of fuel, or open the throttle a little bit when I'm traking it, it kind of wants to hit a little bit, and then it doesn't. I'll show you that real quick. But anyway, I believe maybe it just needs some spark plugs. I mean, obviously the engine needs to be replaced, but she doesn't want to do that. She wants to just get rid of it after she gets her taxes back, get a different car. So I don't blame her. This is not the first time I've dealt with one of these 1.5s and the water intrusion problem. It's pretty common on these, and it's a shame that someone buys these cars and makes payments on them, and then you can tell this is a nice looking car, and the engine's junk on it. So it doesn't do any good to change the head gasket or anything on these because from what I understand, the cylinders actually shift in the block. So when you take it to Ford, they actually replace the block with a new block and replace everything on it. And so I think it's around a $7,500 bill by the time you're all said and done. So anyway, I'll turn it over real quick and let you listen to it. The battery might be going a little bit low. The other day when I was cranking on, I was cranking real fast, and it sounded like there was no timing belt on it at all, or a timing issue. But today it's cranking a little slower. It's probably because the battery's gone down a little bit. But I'll get you in there anyway and let you listen to it and see what you think. I'm just going to try to crank it over real quick. So that's kind of... I think the battery is going low, so I might put in the battery charger. But I think what we're going to do is just pull the plugs out, especially number 1, number 2. I'll go ahead and scan it real quick and see if we got any codes in it. And then I'm going to put in a battery charger real quick, and then we're just going to, I think, just pull that first 1 or 2 cylinders out and take a look at the plugs. Because I think last time when I scanned it, it was cylinder number 1, which was getting the coolant in it. That's usually what the one that does get the coolant in is 1 and 2, usually number 1. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and we'll put this on a battery charger. We'll scan it, see what the codes are, and then start tearing off these the coil packs and see what the plugs look like. Maybe we'll get lucky. We just put some new plugs in it, and she can nurse it along for another few weeks or however long she needs to get a different car. So evidently she's getting a new one as soon as she gets her taxes back. So hopefully we can get it running for her long enough to get it through the next couple of weeks or whatever it is. So I'm going to get set up and then we'll come back. Alright, so I just hooked my little cheapy Harbor Freight battery charger up to it. And I went ahead and ran the codes on the launch, and I kind of got what I suspected. Starter motor deactivated, engine crank time too long. So that's just from cranking on it without starting. Misfire at 1 and 2. Misfire detected in the first 1,000 revolutions. Cannot bleed up fuel tank. It's probably a totally separate problem. starter crank, starter motor deactivated, misfire 1, misfire 1. So we got several misfire 1s and misfire 2. And then we got a fuel tank bleed up, which is not going to be, I think that was in there a long time ago. And then the starter deactivated, so it's just trying to protect the starter from cranking on too much. So I'm going to go ahead and do what we said originally, and we start pulling the plugs out, take a look at them. Maybe put a camera down there and see if we can see inside the cylinder. And I think I already know what we're going to see. We're probably going to see some water down there or coolant. So anyway, maybe we'll get lucky and we can put some plugs in it and get this thing nursed along. Because she says it runs fine. Once I get it out of limp mode, she'll run fine until it runs low on coolant again, and then goes back in limp mode. So I don't think it's using a ton of coolant yet. So hopefully we're not past the point of no return with it, and we can just put some plugs in it, and maybe it'll start up and run for her long enough till she can do something with it. Either way, I wouldn't change the engine on this. Because I wouldn't put a used engine. I would put a used engine if it was me, and then if I did that, I couldn't trust that used engine is going to be good, or it won't. Same thing won't happen down the road. So really, the only way for someone, an independent mechanic, to do something like this would be to send it to the dealer and have them put one of the new blocks in there. I wouldn't do that. So as far as I'm concerned, if I can't get it to run today, I'm pretty much going to be hands off with it, because I'm not going to. I wouldn't put a used engine in this one just because I know these engines have those problems, and then I'll be at that point. If it happens again on the used engine, then I'm responsible for it, and I'm not going to take that responsibility for Ford's issues. So if we can't get it run today, it's going to unfortunately be her problem and Ford's problem, and not mine at all. But I'll do my best to try to get it back on the road for her. It's got 140,000 on it. She don't think the plugs have ever been changed on it. And you got to figure overnight when that coolant's leaking down on it, every time you start it up, that plug's getting wet, and I got a feeling the plugs are about done in this thing, especially number 1, number 2, and that's why it's having the issue. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the coil packs off and pull the plugs out, and we'll take a look at them. So these are just 8mm, hold the coil packs in. I'm going to go ahead and pull them all out real quick, and I got too long of extension. Probably just pull out 1 and 2 real quick first and just see what's going on with this. See what the plugs look like. These are, I believe, 14mm plugs. So your standard 5/8 won't go down in there. I actually have a Ford spark plug removal tool. I don't know if I'll use on this or not. Depends on the length. I'm just going to kind of set these off as they come out. Kind of check the boot out. Boot looks decent. I'm just kind of looking for tracing or any signs of spark jumping. Didn't really see anything there. I don't really see anything here, so I'm going to go ahead and pull out these first 2 plugs and take a look at them real quick. I'll come right back. Alright, so it's kind of redneck setup here. I got a wobble extension with a 14mm socket on it. I just put a little tape around it so I don't lose the socket down in the hole. My actual Ford tool for this doesn't have the swivel on the end, so it doesn't really go down there that well. So I just improvised. The one I have is for the V8, so I went ahead and took the first one out. I haven't pulled it out yet. Oh boy, this thing's tight. I got something else besides my walkie so I don't break it. To at least break it loose. Alright, so I got the first one out. You can see, hopefully you can pick it up. It's really, really wet. And it's pretty worn out. I can tell it's the original plug here. Still has a Ford symbol on it, and it's really worn out, and it's really wet. So I think we're on the right track. Maybe just change the plugs out and see if it'll run a lot longer. I'm going to go ahead and pull out the other 2, and then maybe we'll get a borescope down there and check out the cylinder if I can. My borescope's been kind of acting up with my phone, so I don't know if I'll be able to. But anyway, we'll take the other plugs out and take a look at them. All right, so I got the same issue on this one. Really old plug, and it's wet again, like the other one is. It smells like fuel, but she has been cranking on it quite a bit, trying to get to start. So I guess might be a combination of being worn out and flooded out. So let's go ahead and I guess I'm gonna go ahead and pull the other two out since these look so bad, and just replace all four of them and try to look down in there. All right, so I don't know how well you're gonna pick this up. This is a cheapy Harbor Freight borescope. I actually have a good one that I used to hook to my phone, but I got a new phone now. It doesn't work with it, so I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do with that. But anyway, I got this thing hooked up, and you can see this is down in this is the piston right here, and it's real shiny in the middle, like it's been cleaned off. Usually if you see it real shiny like that, that's coolant getting down on there, and it cleans off the piston, the carbon off of it, and it's real shiny around the edge here of the piston. So that tells me that I don't really see any water in there right now, but like I said, this camera's not all that great, and I don't even know if you can see camera on camera here like this, but I don't see like any standing coolant right now, but I do see evidence of the water intrusion, just with the piston being real clean looking. Like I said, this ain't a great borescope, so you know, but we know that's what's going on with this, and anyway, that is evidence of it. So I'm gonna go ahead. I got new plugs. I'm gonna go ahead and put them in and put them back on, and then we'll see if this thing will start. And like I said, the goal is just to get it to go for a little while longer. So I'm gonna go ahead and put plugs in it, and then we'll come back and see if it'll run. All right, so these two plugs look better. They're not wet, but they are black and fouled. I don't know if it's from trying to start it. I don't think so. It looks like it's just been fouled. These actually came out of the cylinder a lot easier too. The other two barely came out, man. It sounded like I was pulling threads out of the head, which is another indication of possible water intrusion. So anyway, these look pretty worn out. They're all worn out, obviously, 140,000 miles. Almost 150. So I'm going to go ahead and get plugs for it. I'm going to try to get my borescope down there and show you that. I don't know if I'll be able to. And then put some plugs in it and see if this thing will run for a little bit longer. So anyway, I'm going to go order some plugs. I'll be right back. Okay, I thought I had the clear clear, but I didn't follow the steps all the way through, so they weren't cleared. So it should have cranked now. Let's try it. Alright, so I went ahead and put the plugs in it, and it still won't start. And I should have checked this before I put the plugs in this. That's kind of my mistake on this. I got the live data pulled up here, and what I'm looking to concentrate on is this exhaust camshaft. I've seen this before on this engine, and I probably should have checked this first, but I was hoping with this car has 142,000, I believe, miles on it, and she had never had the plugs changed. Yeah, 142,000. And I was hoping that changing the plugs might get her back on the road. But after I saw this, I realized what's going on, and it's not going to be on the road anytime soon. So just check this out. When I crank this, look at this exhaust camshaft, bank degrees, and see what it goes to. Cranking it over. All right. Now, negative 38.62 on the cam, on the exhaust, and it was right about 0.6 on the actual intake. So what's happened here on this engine, I've seen this before, so I know this is what happened. This exhaust camshaft phaser or sprocket has slipped on the camshaft itself, and it's no longer lined up with the crank and the intake camshaft. So if you were to put this engine on top dead center, lock it in at the flywheel like you're supposed to, and pull the cover off, the two front camshafts would line up the sprockets. But if you go to the back of the engine, take the valve cover off, the back of the camshaft would be retarded about 30 degrees from the intake camshaft. And what happens is the camshaft actually rotates inside that phaser or that sprocket and pulls the engine out of time. And the only way to fix it would be the correct way would be to get a new phaser and all new bolts, and then a tiny belt and everything. But the reason why we're not going to do it on this, I believe why these engines are doing that, this is the 1.5 and the 1.6 EcoBoost, is when they hydrolock, well, they're kind of hydrolocking. What happens is at night, the coolant drips into the cylinders, and then when you go to start it, you know, there's coolant in the cylinders, and that builds a lot of pressure up, and most engines will just export it out the exhaust valves, and what happens is this engine will run rough and idle rough, and even like on a Honda or something like that, it's got a timing chain, it'll do that. If it's got a blown head gasket, it'll run rough until the spark plug is able to, and the coolant gets out of the cylinder and clears it out, and then you're fine. It seems like it runs fine after that. Anyway, on these, I think what's happening is because that camshaft does not have a pin or a locking mechanism on it with the phaser, it's just bolted in and set to a certain torque. It actually twists inside that sprocket during the hydrolock or the mini hydrolock that happens with it. It's not actually hydrolocking because it's actually turning over and starting, but you're having excess pressure in the cylinders from the coolant leaking into it. So I think what's happening is, I've seen this before, like I said, so this is why I know this is what happened. I've seen the exact same -30 on the camshaft. Sometimes depending on how much they slip, the car may still run, but it'll run really rough, and it's, you know, it'll kind of backfire and through the throttle body and sound really bad. Anyway, this one, I guess, slipped enough to where it won't start, and then you're in the situation where you're at now, where the only way to truly fix it would be to put a new phaser on it, new bolts, new timing belt, retime it, and get it, and that would get it back on the road. But then you're looking at probably $1,200 in repairs, and then you still got the water intrusion problem, which is the root cause of why this happened. And you know, to do the water intrusion, you need a new block per Ford. So putting the head gaskets on it's not going to fix it. So at this point, I'm going to part ways with it. I'm not going to put a used engine in or anything like that, because once you do that, you're married to the car for the rest of your life. So I'm not doing that. This is Ford's issue and Ford's problem. Unfortunately, it's her problem, but I think she's getting a different car anyway, so I don't know what's going to happen to this car. But anyway, I'll go in the shop and show you what's going on with the camshaft real quick, so you can understand it. If you have one of these cars, you can kind of understand what's going on with it and get a better idea of what you're facing. Regardless, this engine needs to be replaced with a new block, and that will fix the water intrusion problem, and then that'll prevent the camshaft from slipping again. So you're talking on this particular car, you're talking quite a bit of money to fix it. So I mean, any of them. This is a well-known problem with Ford with the 1.5 and the 1.6 EcoBoost. It's not a secret. You can Google it. It happens quite often on these cars, and I think this is like the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, for this particular engine, because you can kind of nurse them along and put coolant in them and they'll run. But this one, with this camshaft slipping like it did, it's you know, it's done. There's no point in fixing that part of it, because you're not fixing the root cause. So anyway, we'll go in the garage and I'll show you why that happens real quick. Because like on a Honda or some of the other ones that use a keyway camshaft phaser, you know, your chain's not going to jump time over this issue. It'll just run rough for a few seconds and clear out. But because of the way Ford designed this camshaft, it can actually slip inside there, and that's what causes this problem here. So anyway, I'll go ahead and show you that real quick, and then we'll end this out. Alright, so this is a camshaft out of a small block Chevy. I'm just kind of going over, just kind of explaining what I was talking about in the car. Most camshafts have some kind of either a keyway or like something like this sticking out, a small stud that I don't have a sprocket with me, but say this is a sprocket. Now, a small block Chevy, you have 3 bolts to hold it in, and then you have this stud that locks the crank pulley or the camshaft pulley sprocket where it's supposed to be, and then you put the 3 bolts in. So really, this thing had a camshaft like this has basically 4 ways for it not to slip. It's got the 3 bolts plus this, and that's pretty much common. You know, most of the 4-cylinder overhead cam engines have 1 bolt in the middle, so that would slip over. But what they do have is most of them have either something like this that sticks out, or they'll have a keyway with the key in there, and then that pulley goes over, it locks in that keyway, and then you put a bolt in the middle and tighten it down to whatever the torque spec is. Well, Ford's wisdom here on their cams and their cranks on this engine, There's no keyway, there's no nipple, there's no 3 bolts, there's nothing. The only thing that holds this pulley or sprocket on phaser onto the camshaft is a single bolt in the middle, and it's torqued down to a certain spec. So what you have to do is lock your camshafts. There's a locking tool in the rear of the camshaft. So the rear of the camshaft, so this is just a regular journal here that's smooth. On the floor, there's a little metal piece that sticks out. You turn it to where it's in top dead center, and you put this lock in there, and that keeps the camshaft from moving. So that's when it's at perfect top dead center. And then you come over here, you put the sprocket on there, you line it up, put the lock in the front here. That lines up all, so you got basically both camshafts locked in the rear. Both camshafts come in, or both phasers come in the front. There's a locking tool that goes in the front, locks them in the right spot. And then all you do is just run this bolt through. It's a single-use bolt through the middle, and that torques it down. Well, obviously, if you have some kind of force on your camshaft, say a hydrolock or coolant in the cylinder, it's pushing on the valve, something like that, what happens is, what's the path of least resistance for this now? You could break something, or what happens with these Fords, I believe, is they're slipping a little bit. So this camshaft slips inside this crank. The phaser stays where it's at, and the camshaft actually slips, 30 degrees one way or the other. Usually retarded on this. They'll slip 30 degrees. So now the engine won't start, or if it does start, it doesn't run well. It's out of time. It's doing what it's doing. You can hear like a turnover fast in the starter, or sometimes on the last one I did, it was popping through the throttle body like I had a slipped timing belt. And you can actually, on that last one I did, I actually locked the flywheel in at top dead center, locked the front of the camshaft phasers in at top dead center, and it all lined up perfectly. So that tells you that the phasers and all that were locked up. Everything was locked up, but when I took the valve cover off, the back, it's got that metal thing in the back that helps you lock it in. On the intake side, it was still parallel with the head. So the head, they're supposed to be parallel with the head. That's how you lock it in. It locks into the camshaft, and then it holds against the head, and that way the camshaft can't move when you're tightening it up the front. Well, on the intake, it was still parallel with the head, and on the exhaust, it was rotated out about 30 degrees, and that's why we had the problem where it was running rough. And the other one actually ran rough. I think it was out about 24 degrees, something like that. This one actually, the one that we just worked on, is actually out 30 something degrees, almost 40 degrees, so that's slipped quite a bit more. But anyway, that's just to help you understand what's going on with it. If you have this problem and it appears that your car is out of time and your belt's still on and all the pulleys are turning over and everything seems like it's right, what probably happened on your EcoBoost is your phaser or your sprocket has slipped. The camshaft has slipped inside that, rotated, and now it's out of time. So it's kind of long-winded, but I'm just trying to explain if you have a similar problem, or even another mechanic is having this problem where they're looking at the scan tool and the intake is where it should be and the exhaust is way out of whack. What's going on is the phaser or the sprocket has slipped inside, the camshaft slipped inside there, and it's out of time. And if you do the job, say you don't have the water intrusion, it just happens for some other reason. If you do the job, make sure you replace the phaser and the bolts. The crankshaft bolt's the same. It does not have a keyway in it. So once you loosen that bolt, you got to make sure it's in time before you loosen all that stuff up, because otherwise it'll slip or rotate inside there. So just be careful with these engines. I personally don't like the fact that they don't have any kind of keyway or a way to lock all those in gear in the time, because if you make any little mistake, or even if you don't know and you would happen to loosen the harmonic balancer bolt or the crankshaft pulley bolt, you can actually you can't reuse that bolt. And then if you try to tighten, say you're taking it off for some other reason, I don't know why you would, but you can actually throw the engine out of time. So you have to put the engine in time, have it locked in. There are special tools that lock it in, and then you can take stuff loose. If you just start taking stuff loose before you lock it in time, things are going to slip and you're going to throw the whole engine out of time. So anyway, that's just my limited knowledge on these EcoBoost engines. I know for a fact they have water intrusion problems quite a bit. And I know for a fact that these phasers slip. And from what I've seen, I'm not a Ford mechanic, but from what I've seen, it's always the exhaust camshaft that slips. So if you have a car, if you have an EcoBoost that comes in your shop or whatever, or you have one that you own, and it won't start and it sounds like it's out of time, you put it on the scan tool, and probably going to see that your exhaust camshaft is retarded, and that's what's happened. And probably the reason why that's happened, I talked to a Ford, when I did my last one, I talked to a Ford tech. He said it happens without the water intrusion. It can happen. So maybe you get lucky, you don't have the water intrusion problem. You can put a new phaser on it and new bolts and put a new belt and time it, and then you're good to go. But make sure you don't have the water intrusion problem before you do that, because I think what's happening on a lot of these is instead of hydro-locking, they're just slipping the exhaust cam on it and causing the problem. So if you fix the exhaust cam phaser problem, get it back in time and fix all that, you're going to have the same problem down the road, because it's the water intrusion problem is not fixed. So just be wary of that if you're in the field. My whole thing on this is I don't really work too much on these engines. I'll do a timing belt or whatever. I do have the tools to lock everything in, but when it starts coming to replacing the engine or head gas or something like that, I don't touch them, because from what I understand, now Ford's saying that possibly the cylinders are actually shifting inside the block, and that's what's causing the problem. And you know, if you put a head gasket on it, it's not going to fix it. It's just going to come back, and then it's going to be your problem forever. So anyway, this one's going to have to go to the dealer to be fixed, or someone else is going to buy it and they're going to try to do whatever they want to do. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm done with it. And I feel bad for anybody that buys these and has this problem, because it's a very expensive issue. But you know, it's not my, you know, I didn't build the car, I didn't buy it. So anyway, that's all for this one. And like I said, I did kind of bamboozle myself with the spark plugs. I probably should have checked that first. You work on so many cars all the time, you kind of forget certain issues. But I was hoping maybe that would fix it and get her back on the road for a while. But I don't know. My first instinct when I heard it was the way it was turning over so fast that it was out of time. I should have known that. But I was just kind of hoping for a miracle. And I bought the cheap plugs, so you know, we're only out $30 to give it a try. If I would have checked I should have checked the correlation and checked that before I did that, and then I would have known not to bother to do that. But I'm not going to charge her for that. I'll just eat that and just charge diagnostic fee and go from there, because it's kind of my mistake. So I'll just charge her my normal diagnostic fee for an hour, and I'll just eat the plugs. So it is what it is. I feel bad enough for her, but anyway. If you have that problem and it sounds like it's turning over fast, just go into your live data, check your camshaft position sensor or positions, and see what it's doing before you do anything else. That's the first thing I'm going to start doing from now on when I get these in, if I do get them in anymore. So anyway, thanks as always. Thanks for watching, and God bless.